We continue our profile of potential likely first-round picks for the Eagles. Zach Berman with Aireontae Ersery, the Minnesota offensive lineman, 6'6", 331. You are familiar with the big Minnesota offensive lineman, given some work you've done in recent years. But what do you make of a player like Ursery as a possibility at 32?
Yeah, big physical guy, like you said. That's what jumps out. So the Eagles, we know, prioritize the line of scrimmage. We know that things being equal, they'll lean toward the offensive lineman. If it's an offensive lineman and a safety, I think they take an offensive
Sure.
lineman. And then the other thing too, and this goes to Ursery's credit, or like it supports Ursery, is that the Eagles like upside, and because they feel like they have the ability to develop that position. And so if there are tools that are there, and as Jeff Stoutland calls them, critical factors, they feel they can get those critical factors out.
All right, well, let's get into what the upside might be with our all-city NFL draft expert, Fran Duffy, who breaks down what Ursery brings to the table. And then on the other side of that, we will get more into his potential fit with the Eagles.
All right, time to now talk about Aireontae Ersery, the left tackle from the University of Minnesota. And this gopher, relatively new to the sport of football, did not start playing football until his high school junior season. And so he came into Minnesota, didn't play right away, had that redshirt season, played a little bit of right tackle early on, but then became a starter at left tackle, and he's been there for the last 3 seasons. So he's played some right, he's played some left. You like that proven versatility. What I would say is his superpower, the thing that you kind of latch on most with Ursery, he's got next level traits. I mean, you're talking 6'6", 330 pounds. He runs the 40-yard dash in under 5 seconds. That's extremely fast for a big man. He's got a 10-foot broad jump, a 30-inch vert. Those are all really impressive numbers. That explosiveness does show up on tape. I love the way he gets out of his stance. He gets out fast. Play speed is very, very important for an offensive lineman. Half the time when guys lose at the point of attack, or when they lose in pass protection, it's because they lose off the ball. They can't get out of their stance. And when you're looking at Ursery, he's got that ability to get off the ball. I think when you're looking at his power, he can move people off the point, off their spot in the run game. He's strong against bull rushers. All the traits are absolutely there. He's got some tenacity to him. He went to the Senior Bowl. I thought he had a solid week. It wasn't a super impressive week, but he's solid performance down there in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. I would say from a negative standpoint, he definitely just needs a little bit further refinement. You're looking at his overall use of hands, especially in pass protection. He can get beat on the corner at times, so he's got some things to clean up from a technical side of things. I think ultimately as well, he can be a little bit clunky in transition, like change of direction type of things. I think that can be an issue for him at times, trying to react to those inside moves. But I think a lot of what you're talking about with him is raw ability. The talent is absolutely there. And so if you're taking him late round 1, middle of round 2, even late round 2, I think you have the ability to really kind of recoup that investment and get a better player than the draft slot would indicate. The traits are all there. I think he's just got to get a little bit better in some certain technical areas. We know that some coaches are more prepared to be able to do that than elsewhere. So if you have a coach where you're able to get the most out of young, raw, underdeveloped players, then you might get a boom here with an Aireontae Ersery. He's one of the more intriguing tackle prospects in this class. He's got some guard flexibility as well.
All right, Zach. Now, what I think Fran said there at the end is very interesting, because if you're thinking about if you are the kind of team that has the infrastructure to get the most out of an offensive lineman, I mean, certainly that makes me think of the Eagles with Jeff Stoutland, right? And so do you think that they would be more willing than most teams to roll the dice on a player like Ursery?
If they feel that the athletic profile is consistent with the size. I don't think they just like big guys, right?
Sure.
They has to be big guys who can move. And so if they feel like the athletic profile is there, then certainly. I don't think they're as thrown off or worried about the unpolished part of it, right? A matter of fact, if you think back to Jeff Stoutland's first draft here, 2013, Lane Johnson was the most unpolished of the offensive tackles at the top of the draft. Jeff Stoutland was really attracted to Lane Johnson because of the tools that could then be developed. And we've seen that time and time again, that players who might need that development, they feel they can bring it out of them.
Now, there is a difference, obviously, between tackle and guard, and Fran is talking about how Ursery could probably slide inside if need be. It does seem like for the Eagles, given what we know, like Jeff Stoutland has said, his ideal guard
you're right.
is a big hulking guy like Ursery. maybe for the Eagles, he would make more sense as a guard than as a tackle. My question for you is, what is your understanding of the evaluation process in the Eagles building for offensive linemen? Is it basically just in stat we trust, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I think there's more to it than that in the sense that your scouts are on the road, right? So they're coming up with grades. Howie Roseman, this is a position that he takes a lot of pride in. He would tell you, working under Andy Reid, it's a position he's seen quite a bit. But and we spoke about this with Fran on the PHLY Eagles show, which you can check out on YouTube. Is that Jeff Stoutland's earned that credibility in the building, not just in terms of his development, but also in terms of his evaluations. And so they really lean on him there. But that point you made is spot on, and it's one that I've really I actually keep kind of running thoughts on the team in the draft process, and I think it's important to note is that a guy who projects as a guard, it might be different calculation in Philly because they're not scared of that big guard. You mentioned Brandon Brooks being the prototype. Mekhi Becton,
Sure.
And Jeff Stoutland said this. People wouldn't look at Mekhi Becton and say, that guy can play guard. Jeff Stoutland looked at him and thought, that guy can play guard.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, with Ursery, it does feel like what we know about value heading into this draft, staying at 32 and taking him would be just okay value, right? It's a possibility that he's someone who they could target with the trade down. Listen, I know that they have needs at defensive end and defensive tackle, and those are important positions for them. I really just think knowing the things that they care about and also knowing the guys that they're going to have to pay on defense coming up, and they're going to have to flip this roster at some point, I can't get away from, I think they would like to use, if not the first-round pick, the second-round pick on an offensive lineman. And so Ursery, to me, makes sense on that standpoint. I don't know if a guy who is 23 years old and is not super athletic is exactly their type, but I think he's the right. It might be right fish, wrong pond, or right pond, wrong fish.
If I set the over under for them drafting Ursery at 39.5, are you going over or under?
Where he gets drafted, or the Eagles?
The Eagles specifically. Like if
I know that they're going to draft him.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if I know that they're going to draft him, I would take the under just because 32 remains a possibility. But
yeah. No, I'm saying, do you think this is more likely a guy who's a second-round pick for them or a trade down far?
Yeah, I think it's a plan D.
Okay.
For them. I think ideally there would be somebody they could move up for who they really love, and then I think there is like crossing your fingers and hoping there's someone they really like at 32, and then I think Ursery would be in the conversation for if we move down or if we have to hold our nose and take somebody. This is like a base hit for us and fills a organizational need.
Well said.
Okay. Anybody else you think is worth talking about from like the offensive line situation there at the end of the first round?
Well, some of the players that we've discussed, if they were to fall, I think Jeffrey Simmons is a guy.
Yeah.
If he were to fall, I think Kelvin Banks. I don't think he falls. I think he'd be more of a trade up. But I think the Andre Dillard situation taught the Eagles that they need to do their evaluations on all these guys, and they need to see.
Remind the people who might not have remembered what the Andre Dillard situation was.
Yeah, so that was a year that was considered like a historic defensive line draft class, and the Eagles really thought they would come out with a defensive lineman. And Andre Dillard, it was a weak offensive tackle class, weaker than this year, but this isn't a great tackle class compared to last year. And Dillard was one of the guys thought to be near the top of it. And the Eagles didn't do as much work on Dillard until like a week before the draft. I think they met with him once in the pre-draft process, but it's not like he came in. It's not like they did a lot of work on him. And I believe Stoutland called him the week of. But they didn't have the same level of information on him that they had on, say, Kenyon Mitchell a year ago or Jalen Carter 2 years ago, right? And so in that case there, what happened was there was this run on defensive lineman. Dillard fell to the 20s. Howie Roseman looked at it for the reason you just said, that this is what they believe in. This is great value at an offensive tackle. They knew the Texans wanted an offensive tackle. They leapfrogged the Texans, traded up ahead of it. It was considered this big boon to get this offensive tackle who was considered to be a top 15 pick, and they get him in the 20s. And the problem is they just didn't have enough information on him from like not just a playing but more the off the field perspective to really have a sense of how he'd fit in the building.
And I think probably change the way that they operate and how important they view getting to know the prospects ahead of time. There you go. All right. Much more to come on PHLY. Like the video, comment below. Tell us if you think Aireontae Ersery would be a worthwhile pick at 32. And then remember, we are going to be live throughout draft weekend, all night Thursday night, all night Friday night, all day Saturday, live. Check us out on PHLY.com.